Adaptations for students with visual impairment will have them more engaged in their art making. For students with visual impairments, it's great for them to use brightly colored paper or fluorescent paper. It's easier for them to see. Sometimes I'll even give them brightly fluorescent paint to work with. Another great adaptation is to use textured surfaces. This one's an embossed paper from a scrapbooking section. Here's another one from that section with texture. Here's a couple pieces of paper that have bright contrast for patterns. So if they're using patterns, if you were doing something that was like light blue on blue, it wouldn't have as much contrast if you were using something like this. When I'm having them draw something, often I'll give them if they need a tracer to use, I'll either give them one that's a little bit thicker or that has a raised glue edge that they can feel. You could even use the puffy paint to put around there so they could really feel it. And always giving a selection of tracers. So you can see this would have more feeling than flat. And then also using the printmaking foam or foam sheets also helps. In addition to that, you can use these sticks, which are sticky, and they kind of hold a shape once pressed. So if you're trying to get them to feel a circle shape, you could press that down on the paper, and then they could help trace around that because they would be able to feel it. So these are a great to use. Same with markers, using things that are nice and bright. And when you're doing any marker work, you want to always, if the student has a hard time seeing, sometimes they have to look up close. If you drew a pencil line, you wouldn't be able to see it as well as if you drew a really bold line like that for them to cut on. So those are great ideas for students that have low vision. Another one that you could do would be, actually I tint some of my glue black, and you could draw with black glue, creating a raised surface. And then once that dries, you get a really nice raised up bead that the students could feel and follow. And then they can color it in or use it in their artwork. So an example of that would be having an underwater scene outlined in the black, and then the students could easily come in and fill the paints in afterwards and feeling the texture of it. Sometimes giving students pre-made pieces if they also would have a cognitive deficit is important. You can see here the difference of a light pencil line compared to a thick black outline to cut out. So students would paint with those first and then actually paint on top of it and create a collage from that. A lot of times you demonstrate, you just kind of talk about the lesson, that having a handout for your visual learners or printing it in a larger font is also a good idea. And you can have pictures of step-by-step processes. And these are a great thing just to put on every table. I never want students to know that I'm adapting lessons or have anyone feel like they're being focused on by me doing adaptations. So sometimes just putting one on every table alleviates that problem, and also is a great thing for all students to have, because so many times students are coming in late from lessons, or they are not really in the mode and listening to you and they don't know what to do afterwards. You can also, this is a print by a famous artist, and so that the child could actually feel it since they can't see it, or they have a little trouble seeing it if their vision's low. I will put glue down and then sprinkle sand on top of it, and it creates a nice surface. Or you could do one with fluorescent paint on top of it. So adding texture to a reproduction is a great way to have them see and feel it. Using bold prints for them to see, nice contrast with it. Or a textured surface. This is a printmaking plate. Again, like I said, high contrast is really important. Thick outlines, and even if you are doing something like a landscape and the student has a cognitive deficit as well as vision, they might need the areas outlined so that they know which areas to color what colors, and outlining with a thick marker is a lot better than just outlining with a thin pencil. giving a lesson like an art rubric at the end for the students to work on. Increasing it to a larger font is a great way to adapt the lesson. And of course, creating on bright surfaces. These are those rolling rollers with patterns on them I talked about today, but using fluorescent paint creates a visually exciting piece of work. Here's a still life where they used a black thick outline and bright colors. It's also important when you're talking about art, whether it's a student's artwork or a artistic reproduction of a famous artwork, is to watch how with students with color deficiencies might not see it the same way. So you might say, well, how did the artist use red to show that it was watermelon flavored? And the student might not be seeing that as red. They might be seeing that as pink or even possibly green if they have color vision deficiencies. I hope you've enjoyed these adaptations.